I'm Mackenzie O'Keefe in the CBSN Denver studio. With many school districts making the decision to start this school year virtually, kids will be spending even more time at home. So it's more important than ever to make sure kids are staying active during the pandemic. Joining me now is Dr. Brooke Pengel, a pediatric sports physician with the Rocky Mountain Hospital for Children. Thanks so much for joining us today. Now, Dr. Pengel, tell us about how important it is for kids to stay active even when they are at home.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Yeah, I really advocate for promoting physical activity for all kids, for all adults for that matter. And as you said, it's even more important now just because we are in a pandemic and we have these stay-at-home orders. The kids were out of school where they tend to get a lot of their activity. So I think we need to be very intentional about recommending exercise for our kids. And the recommended levels of exercise for kids is 60 minutes a day, every single day of moderate to vigorous activities. So I really try to promote that. And I think the screen time is going to go up, of course, because of school. At least they had summer where they were out and about, but I think we have to sort of schedule it into the day at this point.
Absolutely, and 60 minutes a day. So what kind of programs are out there to help parents get their kids moving?
There are a lot of programs out there, and thankfully we're in an age where kids have, I guess it's sort of a double-edged sword with the phone, right? It creates screen time, but you can use that technology to your advantage. There are activity trackers either from a watch or a phone or that type of thing. And so you can give kids goals that way. Sometimes they'll say 10,000 steps, right? 10,000 steps in theory sort of correlates to about 5 miles, in case you're curious. And so do they need that? I mean, it depends on the age of the kid, right? But 60 minutes doesn't have to be the 10,000 steps. But so they could sort of do their own program, but there's a lot of things that they can find just online, like there are online PE classes that you can have. There is a campaign called Exercise is Medicine that I'm a huge fan of, and they have a lot of resources on their website, so parents could go to that website. There's even a very specific resource on keeping your kids active during the coronavirus epidemic, and it has links to different websites that parents can go to for a little bit more prescriptive exercise programs, such as like at-home PE and things like that. And so that's a great resource that has other resources within it. So usually I refer people to that.
That's a lot of resources. I know a Fitbit was one of the questions we were wondering if that was something that you covered. So that sounds like a great way to motivate kids. Another question we have is it safe for kids to have play dates to get some exercise during a pandemic? Because so often kids want to run around with other kids. What's your advice about that?
It's a tough one, right? We've all had to navigate that. I mean, how crazy can we go not being around other kids? I mean, honestly, the scientific answer is we're supposed to be distancing, right? We're supposed to be wearing masks. We're supposed to be 6 feet apart. That is the answer to try to control spread, okay? So would there be a way to have a play date with a child who could honor those principles? It depends on the age of the child and what type of activities they're doing. Like, could they ride a bike together where they're kind of outside and that type of thing? And so I think parents are going to make their choices. They already have made their choices, not even just for exercise, but just for, who are they going to be around? And families are sort of like saying, well, you're in my pod. We're just going to hang out with you as families. And so I guess I'm going to honor those parents' choices about who they're going to be around. But in theory, we shouldn't be doing extra play dates and that type of thing because we're not supposed to be getting that close with kids or having kids be closer than 6 feet. So I know that's a wishy-washy answer, but I would say that we still need to honor the principles of social distancing and hand hygiene and masks and that type of thing, even in this pandemic, which is unfortunately another barrier because kids like to be around other kids when they're active and when they're getting their fitness. So I think you're going to just strike a balance. Kids are going to school, so they're going to be around other kids. So we're having to navigate this world that we have. We're striking that balance of what makes sense for other reasons. And I think it makes sense to perhaps, plan the play dates with safety in mind. But, there's a lot going on there in terms of creating safety for those play dates.
Absolutely, and kids can always have fun with their families as well outside. Tell me if a child's infected with COVID, is it safe for them to be involved in physical activity? Is that good, bad? What should parents know about that?
Good question. I mean, there's a lot to be known about COVID, okay? And we don't really have as many answers as we do questions, we always say. And so we do know that children tend to have a very mild course, but that can vary. So I suppose the generic answer would be if they're sick, for whatever reason, honestly, if they have a fever and they're sick, then exercise really needs to be kind of on the back burner. And I would always emphasize checking with, the family doctor, the pediatrician is probably the best answer there. And if they know they have COVID, the concerns, to be honest, it's probably more an adult concern, is that there can be longer term respiratory and cardiac effects. And so it would be important if the child had a known COVID infection to sort of get cleared by their doctor to go back to exercise. Again, that's sort of my scientific answer. Parents are treating illnesses in their, and managing illnesses in their kids all the time. But the problem with this virus is we don't know enough about the outcomes in the long term with this. And so we're going to err on the side of being conservative and having that child check before they're at least doing very vigorous, regular activity if they have been infected with the virus.
That makes sense. And yeah, like you said, just important for the healthy kids to make sure they're getting out there and getting all of their exercise in during these different times. So Dr. Pfengel, thanks so much for joining us and all this important information for parents and families. And remember to stay with CBSN Denver for all of the latest developments on the return to school this fall.